Welcome to True Talk on WMNF 88.5, broadcasting from our beautiful studios in Tampa, Florida. We're broadcasting live every Thursday at 12:06 p.m. Eastern Time. You can always catch us on your favorite podcast platform. Or you can also catch us on WMNF.org in the archives there or live there. So, on today's program, Samar and I are going to be talking about Trump's tour to the Gulf countries, his first international trip abroad, official state visit. I mean, I guess he did attend the Pope's funeral, but this is his official first trip. Like his first term, his first stop was in Saudi Arabia, but this time he also added Qatar and UAE. So we're going to talk about what to make of his trip, his deals, his recent announcements, negotiating with the Houthis and Iran and others without Israel's permission. What's going on with this administration and with Trump? That and more when we come back. This is True Talk on WMNF 88.5. We'll be right back.
حسرة مخيبها الدنيا ومحلاها الدنيا بلا غسرة فحكيت لأمي ما وناس بالقيمة وعشرة قديمة وقلت يا حسرة رضيت والدينا وينك يا حنينة تفرقنا مشينا وقلت يا حسرة فكرت روحي لقيت روحي ضاعت مني رقد متحير وينو لي رقد متهني.
And this is True Talk on WMNF. And Trump is just wrapping up his trip to the Middle East or to the Gulf countries. And it's not the entire Middle East. Gulf countries refers to the countries in the Gulf, the Arabian Gulf or the Arab Gulf countries. Also, specifically Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. He's now, I think, just wrapping up the UAE. I don't know if he's in the area or not, but he visited those three countries. In each place, he announced deals. I don't remember. I think last time, Samar, that he was in the middle in his first term when he visited Saudi Arabia. The excuse or the justification was that he's going there to counter violent extremism or to get it under control, and that was the big message from that time. Of course, that also tried to include deals, but you saw the images. What was your reaction on all these billionaires that tagged along for the trip?
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed.
Alaikum salam.
I think there is a huge list of the number of CEOs and billionaires and millionaires that were with Trump in visiting. I remember reading many years ago, I can't remember which book, but it was talking about presidential trips and how, for instance, the people who would travel with the president usually would be somebody who cares about the environment, somebody who has to do with water resources, gas resources, natural resources. I don't recall reading about the amount of really business people who can be with a president on a visit. For instance, one of the people that were shaking hands, I think in Qatar, was, I think, Michael Lauder from the Estee Lauder empire. And
Right.
this is a guy who engages in promoting Zionism in Israel, which at the same time tries to incriminate Palestinian activism and stuff like that. So really watching all this and reading the amount of money that I'm saying just a fraction of it that could be invested in the Arab world, in the countries that there is a huge poverty. For instance, the Gulf states not all, I mean, they're wealthy, let's say, but for instance, you have a famine going on in Gaza, and you have the same thing happening in Yemen. You have, for instance, areas in Morocco, in Sudan, in Africa, neighboring countries that where there is so much poverty. So why not use some of this money to help people who are Muslim, like the nations that Trump visited? So people are asking all these questions. Why all this money? For what? Like, why give all that to the U.S.?
Well, I mean, it seems like the answer is pretty clear that Trump is a transactional president, and he's all about deal making and not necessarily committed to any specific principles or values or policy. He's all about the deals, and he thinks by bringing more deals that makes him a stronger president and gives him more leverage. So there's a good side to that, and there's a bad side. Like, you saw Biden. Biden was committed to the policy of Israel, and no matter how much money you gave him, he wouldn't change that.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I was asking from the Arab side. Okay, yeah. I can understand what Trump is doing. I want you to explain to me, or explain to the Arab audience in the Arab world who are asking these questions. I mean, I can understand what you're talking about when it comes to Trump, but why would the Arab
I think that the Arabs are also like Trump. They're transactional, and their number one goal, and when we're talking about the Arabs, we're talking about the monarchs. And I think you also know this, that the monarchs in these Arab countries are... they don't represent the views of their population, and they don't represent the views of the Arab world. There's a huge, gap and disconnect. So these Arab monarchs, whether they're in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and to some extent Qatar, their goal is to remain in power and to remain as absolute, monarchs. They don't have a democracy. They don't have a way for their population to have a say in their direction, and they see themselves, they also need some sort of protection or defense. They see the United States as the global superpower, and they're trying to balance and compete with Israel, who's basically had control over that area in the sense of policy from the United States for decades. And so a lot of people were pointing, for example, look at how these monarchs, even here in the United States, they're trying to smear these different Arab countries and, pointing at this money as some sort of bribery or way to get leverage over Trump. But really, how is that different than what Israel's been doing for the past 40, 50 years in the Israel lobby? They're pouring in millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in these campaigns. All these billionaire CEOs in the United States using their money to advance Israel's cause, which is an unjust cause. I mean, at the end of the day, these monarchs, they're not asking for the United States to help them commit genocide. They're basically asking, Trump to keep them in power or to have that type of relationship and to somehow balance or counterbalance what Israel is doing in the region. Maybe not necessarily for the sake of the Palestinians, but for the sake of themselves. And I think this is for the first time. So to answer your questions, I don't think these monarchs are so interested in helping poor people in the region. Their number one goal is to remain in power, and to the extent that they want to help people in the region is they don't want them to be starving, because otherwise they'll turn on them.
So Ahmed, let me ask you something, because one of the surreal images that I saw on TV and on Twitter is Al-Julani, who is now or Ahmed al-Jarrah, the president of Syria, shaking hands with Trump, and then Trump saying that he's an attractive guy, a tough guy who had a history. I mean, this guy, if people just Google it, they will find that there was a $10 million ransom on his head. And now he is sitting on with Trump. And even your leftist of leftist people on Twitter were saying, this is one of the last thing that they ever expected happening. What did you think of that? And
I mean, Trump
why
is.
is he being promoted like these monarchs? Why are they so supportive of him?
I mean, it's a big question people have been asking, because normally, the monarchs are wary of what they call quote unquote Islamists. These are people that are trying to drive politics. I mean, everybody in the region is Muslim, but there are people who actually are committed to furthering Islam or Islam through politics, or to seek justice through a kind of Muslim or Islamic narrative or paradigm, and to different degrees. Like, for example, in Egypt, the Brotherhood there was trying, to compete through elections, and they participated in the revolution, even though they were not the only ones. And once the revolution toppled the dictator Hosni Mubarak, they tried to get involved in the political process. They won the parliament and they got the presidency, but then eventually they were toppled. They were trying to go the democratic route. Giuliani came from a different track, where he was trying to force change through, violence by repelling and responding to invasions in Iraq and in the region through violence and carrying out attacks, So he had a miraculous turnaround. Like, he went from the prisons in Abu Ghraib during the Iraq invasion to eventually becoming part of Al-Qaeda, to later, having a division with Al-Qaeda or breaking away and starting his own group, to eventually carrying out a revolution, being able to topple at the end the Assad regime. And because they were able to do that, him and his group, they were the winners. And it sends a message to the people in the region: if you're the winner and you're able to eliminate your opposition and you're now in the driver's seat, then people will deal with you regardless of what your past is. And I think that's the message they're sending out. And I think because Syria is really a strategic, important, geographically, they're in a very sensitive place, and everybody's trying to get them to their side. So for the longest time, out of all the GCC countries, the UAE specifically was trying to undermine and make sure that Giuliani and his group do not come to power. And they even wanted Assad to be back in the, to be normalized again. And they started that process. I think just a year ago, Assad, the dictator, was actually at their Arab summit and spoke there. And people were trying to normalize him again. And however, when Giuliani started making a move, Qatar and the UAE and Turkey seemed to be, supported him. And the one that came out as a loser in all of this is the UAE, because the UAE, out of all these countries in the Middle East, is the one place, maybe them and Egypt, they're the ones that are very much, their policy is anti-Islamists. Anybody that has any religious group that's trying to get involved in politics or to try to be part of the government, they're trying to eliminate that. They see that as a threat to their own survival. So they're not that happy about it. But it seemed like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar, to some extent, were trying to push for the normalization of lifting the sanctions on Syria, because they see that if those sanctions continue in place, then it will lead to further violence in the future. Because if people are starving, there'll be further conflict. So I think one of their goals is to lift the sanctions. And it was a natural way, despite Israel's objections and the pro-Israel lobby. Trump announced that he's lifting the sanctions, and which was shock to everybody. And
celebrated.
Yeah.
Actually, they were holding Trump's photos in Syria and dancing and saying, "This is our president and we love him."
Because now, this is a guy that is very has one of the most anti-Muslim administration. This is what's crazy about this. His administration is full of these Islamophobes like Huckabee, Rubio, Pete Hexas, Steve Miller. But you saw all these people.
Ahmed, Because you just mentioned the Hegseth. He has a kafir on his
Yeah.
tattoo on his arm saying that infidels, and he's sitting next to them.
But if you noticed, like in the lineup, because he visited 3 countries, and in their tradition, they have this Mejlis style setting where everybody kind of sits in a big, large room in like kind of a circle or a square. But before that, they all have to go and kind of greet the ruler and shake hands, and they all stand in line. And if you saw the images, Steve Miller and all these like Islamophobes that have waged war, kind of rhetorical war against Muslims and demonize them, they're standing there waiting in their line to shake hands with these Muslim rulers because they're looking for handouts, they're looking for money. So it's just amazing, these images. And it's being, and this is what Saudi Arabia wanted to broadcast to the world, that, they're not just a client state anymore. This is the United States, the most powerful country in the world, going to these, what many people in the West consider to be backward, Arab, uncivilized people, asking and pretty much begging for money. Trump is celebrating, we're getting $1 trillion out of this. They're asking and they're getting, a gift of a Boeing, which is made in the United States. The president can get his own plane from here. However, he has to go to Qatar to get his plane. So it puts them in a completely different light, that they have this agency, they have this power, they have this influence. They're not just some client states. And the most powerful person in the world, the president of the United States, and his entire cabinet, and the biggest billionaires, they're all standing there in line, including Elon Musk. They're standing in line just to shake hands, and and they only get like 5 seconds with these rulers, and then they move on like, a bunch of peasants. I don't know. It was just fascinating. I just remember when Obama went to Saudi Arabia one time, and he had to receive, remember that gold necklace? They were like honoring him, but because the king was shorter and Obama was tall, he had to lean down so he could put the necklace around his neck. And then everybody said it was a big scandal. He's bowing down to the kuffar, to the enemy of the United States. But they're not saying anything.
I want to bring back all Steve Miller's talk about banning Muslims from coming to the U.S. And I mean, it's just really like you said, Ahmed. I wish our mainstream media would be playing these images, but of course...
they played them as like just raw footage if you're just watching on YouTube, but they don't take out these highlights and these clips. But definitely, if I want to run a campaign against Pete Hegseth or Miller, you just take these clips, what they say and what they actually do.
The only one who looks always upset and like wearing a very tight suit is Rubio.
Yeah, Rubio always looks out of place. I think it's because he's kind of small compared to these people, and I think he has some insecurity. I don't know. He's always like he feels like he's remember that meeting with Zelensky, and he's sitting in the sofa and looks like he's about to be swallowed in the sofa, and he just seems. The thing is, all these other guys, Trump is specifically picking he thinks this is like The Apprentice. He picks his cabinet people who are that are like outspoken. They know how to speak to the television cameras. They're all part of like kind of a propaganda campaign. So he's not picking the most qualified people or most competent people for the field or for the ministry or for the department, but he's picking people who can are savvy speakers for television. So that's why a lot of his people are from Fox News, including Pete Hegseth. So maybe Pete puts on a good show. It's all just a big show. But Rubio doesn't have that background. Rubio, he can be a good speaker, but he's not really a showman. So it seems like he's a bit uncomfortable. He's always tried to present himself as a statesman, and now he's got to compete with all these other showmen for attention. And I think he feels a little uncomfortable. One person that seems really comfortable with that is Pam Bondi, who's from Florida. I think she's from Tampa. She was a prosecutor in Tampa for a very long time and became attorney general. And she's now the attorney general. And unlike any other attorney general in America's history, usually attorney generals, they don't really make a lot of television. They're really serious people because they're fighting crime. But this Pam Bondi, she's like, most of the time she's just in the White House. She's just like basically another spokesperson for Trump. And so, yeah, I think he feels maybe a little bit uncomfortable. And he also doesn't have that much power. The person that's making all these moves in the Middle East usually is supposed to be, the one that dictates the foreign policy of the United States is the Secretary of State, which is Marco Rubio. But Trump did something that others haven't done before. He assigned all these ambassadors or envoys to different regions. So for the Middle East, it's Witkoff, one of his very close friends, Steve Witkoff. And he's the one that's driving the Middle East policy. And he is bypassing Rubio. And he's making the deals with the Houthis in Yemen. And he's, opening up the conversations with Iran. And he's the one that's, communicating and got the release of the American hostage in Gaza, Idan Alexander. So this is all Witkoff. Rubio doesn't have a role in that. Difference is Steve Witkoff is actually Jewish, and Rubio is not. However, Rubio is more Zionist in his policy than Steve Witkoff. So Steve Witkoff is actually more pragmatic and more neutral. And, he's now bypassing Netanyahu. What I read is that he's bypassing Netanyahu because he feels like Netanyahu tried to undermine him and tried to play him. And now they don't like that. So they're sidelining Netanyahu, and it was very visible. That's one thing the media talked about, that Trump is visiting all these Middle Eastern countries, but skipped Israel. And now relations with Netanyahu are really bad between Trump and Netanyahu, which some in the region think it's a good thing because Netanyahu has not been a good friend to the United States. Finally, people are waking up. Somebody like Thomas Friedman, I don't know if you saw that headline, where he says, Netanyahu, this Israeli government is not a friend of the United States or an ally of the United States. This was in the New York Times. And people are reading that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, you saw that, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm reading interesting things about Witkoff. But Ahmed, I want to just mention something very important to our listeners. This is not any day in the lives of Palestinians like myself. Today is what we know as the Nakba, and the Nakba is catastrophe. Nakba in Arabic, in English is catastrophe, and today marks 77 years on the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians and the forced displacement of my father and my mother and my family from Palestine, and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, where almost, Ahmed, half of the population were driven under the threat of killing, and after committing so many massacres in Palestine in the 1940s to up to 1948. So today is a very, very sad day in the hearts and minds of Palestinians. I know in Israel very soon they will be celebrating the birthday, the 77th birthday, but for us it marks the loss of Palestine and the massacres that took place, like the Dahmash Mosque massacre or the Deir Yassin massacre. So the story of the birth of Israel wasn't really through honey and flower and roses, but through bloodshed and killing and massacring and raping women. So I just wanted to mention that. And
we do have a clip to kind of give a history about the Nakba. So if you want me to play that, we can.
Yeah.
We also have a speech by Ilan Pape.
Let me just remind our listeners, first of all, Ahmed, this is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. And in a couple of weeks, Ahmed, we're going to be raising funds for WMNF. So we keep such programs like ours on the air. But what I think you're planning to play now was put together by TRT, which is the role of Great Britain, I shouldn't be saying great, but the role of the British Empire in setting the stage to the ethnic cleansing and to the emerging Zionist ideology to take part and take root in Palestine. So it's not like, okay, one day the Palestinians woke up and there was a catastrophe. No, there was a systematic colonial policy implemented by Britain, and that's, I think, what
project that was already happening like 50 years in the works. You know, they set out to do this, and it's continuing. And the problem is, people are fearing that another Nakba is happening right now as we speak in Gaza, and it will likely be even bigger than the original Nakba, the original catastrophe. Before I play, I just want to say that Tom Leonard commented and said that Trump is running our country like an episode of his TV show, The Apprentice. Yeah, we did mention that. And also saying Trump has no allegiance to anyone but himself, obviously not America. These are comments I'm getting in over email. You could also email us at dg@wmnf.org. Martin says that this is all hypocrisy. They have no concept. And John says about Bondi, yeah, she's from Tampa. I went to high school with her. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't really know her, but I had one class with her, and she sat right in front of me. She seemed okay, but definitely a daddy's princess. I'm not sure what that means. I never thought she'd amount to more than a trophy wife. Well, there you go. Don't judge a book by its cover. She's now the most powerful police, officer or prosecutor in the nation, if not the world. Unfortunately, she's, kind of using that to just justify anything Trump says, including receiving this $400 million luxury jet from Qatar. You can't blame the Qataris. You can only blame the United States for, our government for allowing it to happen. And not only is it a gift to Trump while he's president, he wants to take it after he's president. So
isn't there a security risk to such a thing, Ahmed, or the?
Of course, because if you're getting a plane from another government, they could plant whatever in it, like a listening. Not saying that Qatar would. But Trump is very, he's really into, you saw him when he goes to these palaces in the Middle East. He's very envious. He sees how massive it is. He even commented about the marble. He's like, the white marble in here. I know. I tried to get white marble, and I know what it takes to bring white marble in this room, because I guess he was in a room full of white marble, and he was just fascinated. And it just shows how. And the people in the Middle East is like, what's wrong with this guy? Isn't he the most powerful guy in the country? And then he kept, talking about how handsome people are. So people are upset that, of course, he mentioned that the interim president of Syria is attractive. And, this guy was in Al-Qaeda before. So it's very unpredictable, what he says. And again, he doesn't have any allegiances. So, this guy was Al-Qaeda. It doesn't matter. Can I make a deal with him? Can I make money from his earth minerals in Syria? Can I get some of that oil to benefit my family? That's what he's thinking. It's not necessarily like, this guy was killed, that Al-Qaeda is evil and it's against the United States and, they're part of 9/11. So it's very and some people in the Middle East actually appreciate that. Why? Because it's basically what you see is what you get. Whereas with other administrations, what you see is not what you get. You hear a lot of great things about human rights and democracy and elections, but in reality, behind the scenes, they're doing the opposite, So let me play this in honor of remembering the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe. This is how Britain paved the way for the Palestinian Nakba. And it's about 5 minutes, and we'll be right back.
When you think of Palestine, you may think of massacres, land seizures, and Israel's decades-long occupation. But what you might not know is that another country played a driving role in the mass displacement of Palestinians. For centuries under Ottoman rule, Palestine was a religiously diverse land where Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived alongside one another harmoniously for the most part. Then in the early 90s, a small number of European Jews began trying to drum up support for Zionism and the establishment of a Jewish homeland following the launch of the modern Zionist movement by Theodor Herzl at a conference in Switzerland in 1897. The founders of the movement, which did not have much support among the diaspora Jews at the time, decided that they would advocate for a Jewish state in Palestine, even though only around 8% of the population of Palestine was Jewish. During that same period, Arab nationalism was gaining momentum across the Middle East, including among Palestinian Arabs who opposed both colonial rule and growing Zionist ambitions in Palestine. Imperial Britain, fully aware of these conflicting aspirations, sought to exploit these dynamics to serve its own colonial interests. In 1915, Henry McMahon, Britain's representative in Cairo, approached Arab leaders with a proposal. Britain would agree to Arab independence if they joined the Brits in the war against the Ottomans. Then in 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary Lord Balfour sent a one-paragraph letter to Walter Rothschild, a leading figure in the British Jewish community. It read, His Majesty's government views the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this objective. The proposal outlined in this letter, which became known as the Balfour Declaration, contradicted a declaration made by the British and French armies in 1918, assuring the people of Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia of autonomy. This contradictory declaration was not isolated. It followed earlier conflicting commitments by Western colonial powers, most notably the secret 1916 Sykes-Picot Agreement, in which Britain and France had already agreed to divide large parts of the Arab provinces between themselves. Britain had essentially promised independence to the Arabs living in Palestine, but also pledged a homeland for Jews on land that was already inhabited. Were the British simply transferring land that did not belong to them to whoever they liked? When the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1918, the League of Nations decided to give Britain a mandate, or administrative control of Palestine. In 1920, the Brits began their mandate, tasked with acting on behalf of both indigenous Palestinians and the Jews who wanted to colonize Palestinian land. Britain then decided to draw up arbitrary borders, transferring the eastern bank of the Jordan River to the Hashemites, who later founded today's Kingdom of Jordan. It was under the British mandate that European Jews began to emigrate to Palestine and buy up land. The Jewish population in Palestine grew tenfold from 60,000 to more than 600,000 between 1918 and 1947, and many Palestinians saw the mass influx of Jews as a European colonial movement. So, as one might expect, Palestinians began to resist, and in 1929, riots broke out at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and many Palestinians and Jews were killed in the violence. But Jewish immigration only increased after the revolts, leading to more frustrations among the indigenous Palestinians and hence more riots. The British response was heavy-handed, and some 5,000 and 7,000 Palestinians were killed during another round of violence between 1936 to 1939. A Royal British Commission had in fact concluding in 1930 that in allowing mass immigration of Jews into Palestine, Britain had created two distinct societies that couldn't be reconciled. Britain's solution, a partition of the land. The Arab Higher Committee, the main Palestinian political organ at the time, rejected the proposal, saying it was all Palestinian land. Britain banned the Arab Higher Commission and introduced the White Paper of 1939. It stated that Palestine should be a binational state inhabited by Jews and Palestinians, but that Jewish immigration would be limited for 5 years. However, illegal immigration was on the rise, and violence continued to erupt. Britain finally reached a point where it couldn't handle the mess it had a part in creating, and handed Palestine back to the UN. It was in 1947 that the UN decided to partition Palestine, and soon thereafter, Zionist militias violently expelled over 750,000 Palestinians, 80% of the Palestinian population at the time, from their homes and land, killing thousands of people and ethnically cleansing over 400 Palestinian villages to form the State of Israel. Zionist gangs may have been the ones to expel Palestinians from their homeland, but the British promising land that already belonged to Palestinians to other people paved the way for decades of occupation and bloodshed.
My mother was born and lived in Nazareth and married my father there in 1932. They had to register the wedding, and together they went to the Palestine government mandatory office. The official there was an Englishman, and my mother said that she watched him sort of rip up her passport. And he, in amazement, my mother said, "Well, why are you doing this?" He said, "Well, now you'll travel on your husband's passport." And she said, "Yes, but I mean, why did I have to lose mine in that way?" And he said, "Well, because your place and this card is going to be given to a Jewish immigrant to Palestine."
So that's a report by TRT World, titled "How Britain Paved the Way for Palestinian Nakba." You can find it on YouTube. It was just put up 22 hours ago in memory or in recognition of the Nakba, which is today. Today is the day of the Nakba, the day of the catastrophe, which was just described, how Britain paved the way for that day. By the way, if you want to learn more or read more about the Nakba and the catastrophe, here are some book recommendations that we're recommending. The book by Ilan Pappé, titled "The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine." And Ilan Pappé is obviously Jewish. And also Theodor Herzl. I mean, this is the founder of Zionism. His book, "The Jewish State." I mean, I don't like Alan Dershowitz, but he does a forward. But you can read it in their own words, what they described, what he envisioned back in the 1800s of what that Jewish state would be. Rashid Khalidi, his book, "The 100 Years' War on Palestine," from 1917 to 2017. And also Gardner Thompson, "Legacy of Empire, Britain, Zionism, and the Creation of Israel." We're talking about the Nakba. We're talking about Trump. And I don't think Trump is going to be remembering the Nakba, but he may be recognizing the birth of Israel.
People are we're waiting for, out of all this showering him with billions of dollars, to say something about Gaza. But I think I want to read here a quotation. The only thing that he mentions about Gaza is, "I have," and I'm quoting here Trump saying, "I have concepts for Gaza," as if it's a store and you want or a restaurant and you want a concept. "I have concepts for Gaza that I think are very good. Make it a freedom zone. Let the US get involved and make it just a freedom zone. And he would be proud if the US takes it." Now, that's a different slant and take from Gaza the US wants to take Gaza and capture Gaza and all that. However, what's interesting, Ahmed, today is that Hamas came out with a statement saying that they kind of did peace negotiations negotiations with Witkoff through an American supporter of Trump. I think his name is Bishara Bahbah, who negotiated the release of the American Israeli soldier that was captured by Hamas, and that they released him in good faith because there was a promise to continue the negotiations and to allow food to enter. Mm-hmm. And it seems none of that has materialized. But on top of that, Ahmed, just since this morning, 114 Palestinians have been wiped out with Israeli American bombs. One of them is a mosque in Jabalia, where they told the orphans to, some Palestinian local charity told the orphans to go to this mosque to get some aid, and they were all killed. I mean,
it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal what the Israeli government is doing. It's criminal. These are war criminals. And anyone that doesn't say that now and is justifying it is just disgusting in my eyes, because it's so obvious. You saw the testimony of the UN official at the Security Council, how he's describing how children are starving. This is not Hamas. These are children, and they're starving right now. They're using it as a weapon of war. These children are not going to grow up, and their families are not going to grow up loving the state of Israel. And as
not them, not anyone.
Not anyone.
People are mad in the Arab world, but because we have undemocratic systems and authoritarian systems that arrest anyone who tries to show any sympathy to the Palestinians, but people are angry, Ahmed. And I don't know if this just happened maybe an hour ago. The graduation at NYU, a student, what they call them, the smart students that need to do the speech, he said, my conscience
valedictorian.
will not tell me. Yes, he said, but I condemn the genocide in Gaza. And you should see how the whole erupted. You should see how the reaction. And guess what? The university withheld his graduation degree until there is...
the valedictorian himself. They withheld...
Yes. Actually, I have it here. If you want, I can take chances and play it because the audio might not be good. Do you want me to do that? Because it just happened.
We may have to play it next time because we don't want to take chances with the audio. But it's just, again, it shows you that our government here in the United States. Oh, are you playing it already?
Yeah. Do you want to try? If the audio is not good, just let me know. Okay. Here it is. That's the student trying to gather himself. And by the way, he's not Arab or Muslim.
Fellow graduates and loved ones, trying to find my family in the crowd.
The audio is not that great, Samar. If you could send me the link, because it's not picking up that way.
Okay, Ahmed.
And we have to, keep the quality really good, because this is True Talk, and if they can't hear the audio, then there's no True Talk. But I think that's an example. What you highlight is an example that whether it's in the United States, which is supposed to be a democracy, or in these Middle Eastern countries that are led by dictators, the one thing they both have in common is that they're trying to silence individuals that are protesting a war. Can you imagine? Like, these people are protesting, whether they're there or here or around the world or in Europe. They are protesting and speaking out against bombing children and killing and starving children. And somehow these governments, whether they're the governments or they're the school administrations, they oppose that. So if the valedictorian at NYU says, condemns what's happening in Gaza, and then the school administration, their response to that is to withhold their degree, like the top performing student of the class, to withhold the degree until they figure out, what's going on. That just shows you that they want to punish. There's no free speech. So even in the United States, they're also criminalizing speech, and they're not allowing people to get that message out in different levels. Now, of course, they're not necessarily, but in some situations, if you're a green card holder or you're here on a student visa, they're even arresting, and they're trying to deport, just like the Turkish student that all she did was write an op-ed, or she wasn't the only one. She, I think, co-authored an op-ed at Tufts University criticizing what's happening in Gaza, and that was it. And she ended up spending 4 weeks in prison, and it took so many hearings for a federal judge to finally order her release. And the U.S. government was not allowing it, the Trump administration. So what you're saying is, in the Middle East, they're clamping down on speech, but it's also happening here in the United States. But that's when it comes to Israel. Nothing else. You can criticize Trump, you can do whatever you want to anyone else, but Israel is somehow off limits to all these people. And I think that's really disturbing.
And people are, I think, investigating and want to investigate Qatar because they are investing in the U.S. in changing the image of Qatar and maybe influencing opinion. And if you just look at what AIPAC gives to let me give you an example of Hillary Clinton. She's criticizing the fact that Trump will take a plane from Qatar for $400 million. And she has taken millions and millions and millions from a lobby that lobbies for a foreign nation. But nobody seems to put the two together.
Exactly.
Anything that has to do with Israel, and this has to do with the lobby and its ability to stifle dissent. And our True Talk is a stark example. We are a little tiny station when you compare it to the rest of the United States, and if you compare us with Fox News and with all these right-wing and Zionist radio shows that are available, or media. And they tried their best to silence you and I and force WMNF to remove us from the air.
Still trying.
Still trying, and they keep trying. It's not over, our listeners. That's why we appreciate it when you support True Talk during the fund drive. But all this intimidation and labeling anybody anti-Semite and other people will be scared, Ahmed. So
we are. The craziness is we are being accused of anti-Semitism for speaking out against killing children by people who are not Semites, and we are Semites. I'm a Semite. You're a Semite. The people criticizing us are not Semitic. They are people who are, white, who are, I don't want to get into it, but most of these people that in the United States that say they are supporters of Israel are white people, regardless of their religion. Being a Zionist does not mean you're a Semite. Being a Zionist is a political ideology. Being a Semite is like a type of ethnicity. And Arabs are, and Arabic language is a Semitic language. We are Semites. We're not self-hating Semites. We oppose what Israel's doing because it is unjust. It's killing children. It's killing innocent people. It's taking their land. It's land theft. It's not rocket science. They came from Europe. They took somebody else's land. And not only do they just want to cohabit the land together, they want to eliminate them off their land and force them off their land. Like, what? It's just common sense. If somebody came and did that to us here in Florida or in the United States, we would also reject that, and we would oppose it, and we would resist it. So it's not rocket science. It's not that complicated. They try to make it complicated and say, it's been happening for thousands of years, and they hate the Jewish people, and they invoke the Holocaust. Holocaust happened in Europe. Arabs never, ever, ever, Muslims have never committed a Holocaust, and especially against the Jewish people. It's never happened. That happened in Europe by so-called Christians, in the name of Christianity, in the name of the church, whether it's the Catholic Church or other churches. Jews were put into ghettos in Europe because of Christians, not because of Muslims. People are trying to reinvent and rewrite history. People like Mike Huckabee. The history of his religion has been to persecute and eliminate Jews in Europe and other places. Even here in America, there was anti-Semitism by Christian people. It was not by Muslims. If people that are opposing what Israel's doing now in the Middle East, it's not because of their religion. It's because they're taking their land. It's like we repeat it so often, but people still don't get it.
Ahmed, I think the New York Times just 2 days ago finally put on their front page the fact that there are Israeli military who are saying that there is actually, in private, some Israeli officers admit that Gaza is on brink of starvation.
Yeah, I saw that.
Them a month and 77 days, I think. No caravan, no aid has entered Gaza. And finally, they put this on May 13, front page, very shyly. I mean, some people say, there are Holocaust deniers, not only in the Western mentality, but sometimes in the Arab mentality. And I say, why do you say these things? And they say, because it's impossible for all these people to be taken and to be killed without the neighbors and without the people knowing. So I think Gaza is the stark answer to that. Hey, the whole world is seeing the butchering of men and women and babies and cutting them into pieces. It could happen.
Yeah.
It is happening. So this is my answer to these people.
That's a very good point.
It's already happening.
And what's more disgusting is, not that anyone can be more disgusting than the Nazis. The Nazis were trying to hide what they were doing. And it was not streamlined. Yeah, there were, reports, rumors. I'm sure some people in that area knew or heard stories, but it wasn't broadcast. We are watching what's happening live, sometimes live, streamlined on our phones. It's not like just some rumors. No, people are seeing it live. We're getting live reports by the minute, by the hour of the death and destruction. And not only that, these soldiers in the Israeli military are boasting about it. They're making reels, making fun of and being proud about what they're doing.
They're barbecuing. If you go to Twitter now, I'm looking at it. They do this. These are soldiers stationed in Gaza, in the north, and they are barbecuing meat, and they put it on Twitter and on TikTok, so the Palestinians can see it.
Wow! So they can see that they're just a few miles away, and they're eating meat, and these Palestinians are starving. And not only that, they take pictures with dead, people. Somebody, I saw this one video where a soldier did a gender reveal by blowing up like a building. Did you see that? And then the color of the smoke came out as blue, and that was his gender. He blew up an entire building to record it as a gender reveal. It's just pure. I don't know. It's just fanatical by a bunch of maniacs, bloodthirsty. It's not just. This is what we're seeing, and no way is this representative of the great religion of Judaism. These are not people acting in the name of Judaism. What Zionism has become is really disturbing. And what this Israeli government has become, this ultra-nationalist, messianic, and I think this is what Thomas Friedman himself, he said this about the group of people that are leading now. These people used to be the fringe in Israel. Now they're in power. They used to be the fringe. They're the ones that killed Shimon Peres. They're the ones that followed the radical, extremist, messianic rabbi Kahane, who was just so, racist against the Arabs. Those people used to be on the fringe. They were banned from politics in Israel. Now they're part of the government. And they're pushing Israel to a place. Yeah, they've always had this kind of ethnic cleansing, but some leaders within Israel were trying to figure out solutions. But now, no, these people want one state, greater Israel, not even within the borders of what it is now, but not only Palestine, the occupied territories of Palestine and Gaza, they want to go further. They want to go to Egypt. They want to go to Jordan. They want to go to Iraq. They want to go from the river to the river, this greater Israel project, when you mention that, people say, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory." No, they talk about it, right? Do you see those reports?
They have maps of it, like maps in their official government buildings, and they have these maps all over.
Yeah, and they believe that extends all the way to like the Nile River in Egypt, and the Euphrates always in Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Like Medina would be part of this greater Israel. This is who's leading it there, and somehow our money. And I think that's why, and I'll end with this because we're out of time. I saw this clip yesterday. One of the founders of Ben & Jerry's ice cream did this courageous thing in the hearing with Bobby Kennedy, where he screamed out because they're trying to cut Medicaid. And he screamed out saying that the U.S. government is funding the starvation of children in Gaza and killing children by funding it by cutting Medicaid here in America. They're trying to cut Medicaid here so they can continue funding nonsense like this murder and genocide that's happening in Gaza. We should contact our members of Congress and speak out against that because our money is being misused. Samar, we're out of time. The Scoop is next. Hope you have a great weekend. This has been WMNF True Talk on WMNF Tampa. Take care.